I stood at the entrance of the grand estate, trying to steady my nerves. The day was bright, one of those crisp mornings where everything seemed to align perfectly. I was dressed in my best suit, shoes polished, a tie that Emily had picked out for me. Everything was supposed to be just right. This was Sophie's wedding, her big day, and although I didn't know her as well as I knew Emily, I was there to support my wife. Emily had been talking about this wedding for weeks. She had helped with the planning, and her excitement was palpable. I was happy for her, happy to see her family celebrate, even though I didn't always feel like I belonged in that world. Her family was different, wealthier, more polished, like they lived on another plane. I wasn't complaining about it, but I had grown used to feeling like the outsider at family gatherings. Still, today, I told myself, was not about me or Emily's family. It was about the celebration. I approached the entrance with my head held high, the event staff standing there with a clipboard. I handed him my invitation with a smile, trying to project confidence. But when he glanced at the paper, his face twisted into a frown. "Your name isn't on the list," he said flatly. I blinked, not understanding. That couldn't be right. I was Emily's husband. "I'm Mark Evans, Emily's husband," I said, my voice steady, but confusion starting to creep in. The guard didn't seem moved. He scanned the list again and shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir, I can't let you in." At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Maybe Emily had forgotten to confirm my attendance, or perhaps there was some clerical error. But then, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. Emily was standing just a few feet away, laughing with her mother, Jessica. They weren't rushing to explain, to fix this, to vouch for me. They were laughing. Emily had one hand over her mouth, trying to stifle her giggles, and Jessica didn't even bother to hide her amusement. She laughed openly, her head thrown back, the sound of it ringing out across the entrance. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. My stomach churned, and I could feel a heat rising in my chest, but I refused to show it. I kept my composure. I glanced at the guests milling about, some noticing the scene, others pretending not to. Whispers started, and I could feel the weight of their gazes. A few phones were raised, no doubt capturing this humiliation for posterity. The anger, the confusion, it all bubbled up inside me, but I knew better than to make a scene. If I started shouting, if I demanded an explanation, it would only make it worse. I knew what they wanted, a spectacle. So, I did the only thing I could do. I straightened my shoulders, nodded to the security guard, and turned away. The drive home was a blur. My thoughts raced, replaying the moment over and over in my head. How had this happened? How had it come to this? Emily and I weren't perfect, but I thought we were partners. This felt like something deeper, something calculated, something designed to degrade me, to show me that in her world, I didn't matter. I parked the car and sat there in silence for what felt like hours, staring at the dashboard. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked foreign to me, stoic, calm on the outside, but inside, a storm was brewing. That night, Emily came home. The faint scent of champagne and roses clung to her, and she didn't seem the least bit surprised to find me sitting on the couch. "You didn't stay for the ceremony?" she asked, her tone light, almost innocent, like nothing had happened. I looked at her, searching for some sign of remorse, but all I saw was indifference. "You knew I wasn't on the list," I said evenly, my voice tight. She shrugged. "Mom thought it would be best to keep things simple. Sophie wanted an exclusive guest list. You understand, right?" I didn't respond. What was there to say? I could feel my anger rising, but I couldn't let it control me. This was more than a rejection from a wedding. This was a rejection of me as a person, as a partner. And as Emily slept soundly beside me that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The laughter, the whispers, the humiliation, it all replayed in my mind like a cruel loop. Something had shifted, and I knew deep down that things were never going to be the same again. The days after Sophie's wedding blurred together, each one passing by like a dull echo of the one before. I kept replaying that moment. The embarrassment, the laughter, the realization that I was nothing more than a prop in Emily's carefully curated life. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. My mind was racing, but on the surface, everything was calm. Too calm. Emily returned from the wedding that night, still glowing with the excitement of the event, the faint scent of champagne and roses still lingering on her clothes. She didn't seem to notice my cold silence or the tension that had built up between us. If she did, She didn't care. "Why didn't you stay?" she asked, sitting beside me on the couch. Her voice was light, but there was something in it, a hint of distance. She had already moved on from the incident. I hadn't. "I couldn't get in," I replied, keeping my voice even. "You knew that." Her eyes flicked to mine, but there was no remorse. "Yeah, Mom thought it would be better if things were kept simple," she said, dismissively. "Sophie wanted a very exclusive guest list. You understand, don't you?" I didn't respond. What was there to say? The way she brushed it off made it clear she had no intention of discussing it further. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just about the wedding. It wasn't a mistake or a slip-up. It was intentional. It wasn't just me not being allowed into the venue. It was me being publicly rejected by the very woman who was supposed to be my partner. But I didn't let it show. Not yet. I had to think clearly, gather myself. Over the next few days, I found myself becoming more and more aware of the growing divide between us. Emily's life seemed to revolve around appearances, social media, and the validation of others. Meanwhile, I was working long hours, building a stable, responsible life, and it felt as though none of that mattered to her. Every time I came home, Emily was sprawled out on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her eyes glued to the screen, her fingers flipping through endless pages of online shopping or Instagram posts. Her outfits, her dinner plans, her vacations, they were all about projecting a perfect, glamorous life to the world. And I was nowhere in that picture. One evening, I was sitting at my desk, reviewing some work documents when I overheard a conversation between Emily and her mother, Jessica, in the other room. "Mark just doesn't get it," Emily said, her voice dripping with irritation. "He thinks budgeting means saying no to a new pair of shoes. It's embarrassing." Jessica's response was muffled, but I could hear enough to catch the words. "It's just a phase." A phase. That was how they saw me. A temporary inconvenience, something to be tolerated until they could move on to something better. I clenched my fist as I sat there, staring at the screen in front of me. My stomach churned, but I didn't show it. Instead, I let the words sink in. It was clear now. This wasn't just about me not fitting into her world. It was about the fact that, in her eyes, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't wealthy enough. I wasn't glamorous enough. And I didn't live the kind of life that Emily wanted to present to the world. The next morning, Emily spent hours scrolling through her phone as usual. She seemed more detached than ever, her attention entirely consumed by her followers and the image she was projecting. It was like I didn't exist. Her Instagram was filled with pictures of lavish dinners, boutique shopping trips, and her friends, all in glamorous locations. Yet, despite everything, I wasn't even a footnote in her posts. No photos, no mentions. It was as though I was invisible to her. I tried to reach out, to ask her how her day went, to engage in some kind of real conversation. But every time, I was met with indifference. It was as though she was barely aware I existed beyond the role I played in her life, a stable provider, someone who helped fund the lifestyle she so desperately craved. One evening, I made the mistake of scrolling through her social media. Her feed was a perfectly curated masterpiece, a facade of beauty, wealth, and success. But the more I scrolled, the more I realized just how much of a stranger she had become. I clicked on a video from Sophie's wedding, uploaded by one of Emily's friends, and froze. There it was, me, standing at the entrance of the venue, being denied entry by security. And in the background, Emily and Jessica were laughing. The video, captioned with "When you don't make the VIP list," made my blood run cold. This wasn't just neglect or indifference. This was intentional, public humiliation. It wasn't enough that they had excluded me from the wedding. They had made sure the world knew about it. I closed the laptop, feeling sick to my stomach. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. But I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't going to be ignored. Not anymore. The longer I stayed in this marriage, the more I realized I was just a prop in her show. And if that was the case, then it was time to rethink everything. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The signs were all there, from Emily's late nights to her cold, dismissive attitude towards me. I had put it off for too long, convincing myself that things would get better, that maybe this was just a phase, or that she was stressed. But I knew deep down that something was off. And now, after everything that had happened at Sophie's wedding, I knew I couldn't let it slide. One evening, after she had gone out for yet another girls' night, I found myself standing in front of her laptop. I had never gone through her things before, not out of respect, but because I had trusted her. That trust had slowly chipped away over the last few months, and now I was standing there, searching for the truth. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I couldn't walk away without understanding what had been happening behind my back. I had to know what was going on. I opened her laptop and immediately headed for the messages. Her email inbox was open, so I started there. It didn't take long for me to find a thread between Emily and a man I didn't recognize. His name was Brandon W., but it didn't take much to realize that it was someone she had been keeping secret. I clicked on the conversation, and the first message made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a casual conversation. It was flirtatious, explicit, and intimate. "Last night was crazy," Emily had written. "I can still feel you on me. I wish I could stay tangled with you forever." Sophie's party was perfect timing, wasn't it? We humiliated him just for fun. My mind went blank for a moment as I tried to process the words. Sophie's party. Perfect timing. Humiliating me. The image of Emily laughing with Jessica at the entrance of the wedding came rushing back. She hadn't just been ignoring me. She had been planning this with someone else, mocking me behind my back. I kept reading, each message digging a deeper hole. Emily and Brandon were clearly close, closer than I had ever been with her. They exchanged photos, videos, voice notes. Some of the voice notes were disturbing to listen to. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had lied to my face, telling me she was too busy to connect with me, but all the while, she was pouring her energy into this affair. One of the messages caught my eye, and it made my stomach turn. Emily had sent a voice message to Brandon saying, "He still thinks we're working on things. Per baby, he's so clueless." Clueless. That's how she had seen me. I had been the fool, the one who kept believing in the marriage, kept working hard, kept trying to fix things. All the while, she had been building a life with someone else, someone who, according to these messages, made her feel alive. A life that didn't include me. I shut the laptop with a snap, my hands trembling. I didn't need to read anymore. I had all the proof I needed. The silence in the room felt suffocating. My mind raced with anger, but I knew I couldn't react impulsively. I had to be smart about this. I spent the next few hours sitting in silence, replaying the messages in my mind, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so completely. I had trusted her. I had worked hard to provide for us, to build something stable, and this was how she repaid me? By lying, by humiliating me, by flaunting her affair in my face? I didn't feel anger just yet. I felt numb. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a cold, calculated decision on her part. She had chosen him over me, not once, but repeatedly. I had been living a lie. When Emily came home later that night, I was ready. I didn't greet her, didn't ask how her evening had been. I didn't care about any of that anymore. She walked in, smiling, the same cold smile she had been wearing for months. "Hey, babe, I'm home," she said casually, setting her purse down. "How was your night?" I didn't answer her. I simply walked into the living room, grabbed the laptop, and threw it in front of her. I didn't say a word at first, just let her look at the screen. She froze as soon as she saw what was on it, her eyes going wide. "What's this?" she asked, her voice faltering for the first time since I'd known her. I didn't let her off the hook. "Care to explain?" I said, my voice calm, controlled. "How long has this been going on?" She tried to recover, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I repeated. "You're texting him, sending him voice messages, planning to humiliate me at Sophie's wedding. You think I'm stupid?" Her face shifted. She wasn't surprised anymore. "I didn't mean for things to get this far," she said, her voice trembling, but I could hear the defensiveness in it. "I didn't know how to tell you. It just happened." "Happened?" I asked, my voice rising now. "You've been planning this for months, and now you want to say it just happened? This wasn't a mistake. You made a choice." Her eyes darted around the room, her calm mask slipping. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "Too late for apologies, Emily," I said coldly. "You've hurt me enough. And I'm done." I stood up, turned my back to her, and walked out. I didn't care if she cried, if she begged. I was done. The mask had fallen, and I saw her for who she really was, a woman who had chosen to betray me for something fleeting and shallow. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The silence that followed the confrontation felt suffocating. Emily's words hung in the air, but none of them meant anything anymore. I had given her everything, my trust, my loyalty, my love. And she had repaid me with lies, with secrets, with a betrayal so deep I couldn't even comprehend it. I could hear her footsteps behind me, but I didn't turn around. I knew she was following me, probably desperate to explain, to say something, anything to fix this. But I wasn't interested in her explanations anymore. There was nothing she could say that would change what I knew. I walked to the front door, my hand resting on the knob, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I felt strangely calm, even detached. The anger I had been holding on to for so long was still there, but it wasn't consuming me. I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. "Mark, please." Emily's voice was shaky, but there was an edge of desperation to it. "I made a mistake, okay? I didn't think it would get like this." I turned to face her for the first time since the confrontation. She was standing there, her eyes wide, her hands wringing together nervously. The woman I had once loved, the woman I had trusted, now seemed so far removed from the person I was looking at. The mask had fallen, and there was nothing left. "You didn't think?" I asked, my voice low steady. "No, you didn't think. If you had, maybe you wouldn't have thrown away everything we had." Her face flushed with guilt, but it was too late. She had already made her choices. "Mark, I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was just so unhappy. And then Brandon, he made me feel alive again. You didn't see me. You didn't hear me." I stepped closer to her, the anger bubbling up again, but I kept it in check. "You think I didn't see you?" I repeated. "You think I didn't notice the distance between us? The coldness? But I worked. I provided for this family. I sacrificed everything to keep us afloat, and this is how you repay me." She winced, her eyes flickering with a mix of regret and defensiveness. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said again, as if repeating the words would somehow make them true. "But it did," I said, cutting her off. "It happened. And now we have to face the consequences." I looked at her for a moment longer, searching her face for something, some sign that she truly understood the magnitude of what she had done. But there was nothing. She was just a woman, caught up in her own selfish desires, trying to justify her actions with excuses that no longer held any weight. "Mark," she started again, her voice trembling, "I'm sorry. I can't change what I did, but I want to fix this. I'll do anything." I let out a dry laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. "Fix this? How, Emily? How do you fix something that's broken beyond repair? You've destroyed everything. The trust, the respect, the love, it's all gone." She reached for me, her hand trembling as she touched my arm. "Please, don't leave me," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I'll do anything. We can work through this. We can fix it together." I pulled my arm away from her touch, the coldness in my chest growing with every second. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was going to be fine. There was no going back now. "I'm not here to fix anything," I said firmly. "You've made your bed, Emily, and now you have to lie in it." She stared at me for a long moment, her face a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. "You're really leaving, aren't you?" she whispered, almost to herself. I nodded slowly. "I am. I can't be here anymore. I can't keep pretending. It's over." I turned my back on her and walked out the door. The sound of her voice calling my name echoed in the hallway, but I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. I had made my decision. There was no more second-guessing, no more wondering if I was doing the right thing. This was it. It was over. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The weeks following my departure from Emily's life were unsettling in their calmness. I had moved into a temporary apartment, small, bare, and unfamiliar. There was no scent of betrayal lingering in the air, no memories of false promises. It was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't have to work hard to adjust. After years of living with Emily's demands and her family's pressure, I found that I could breathe again. I wasn't constantly on edge, worried about meeting expectations I never agreed to. My mind, however, kept returning to one thought: revenge. I had spent years being her provider, her anchor, and in return, she had shredded any sense of dignity I had left. She had humiliated me in front of her family, laughed at me in front of friends, and worst of all, tried to erase me from her carefully constructed life. It was time to make her face the consequences of her actions. But I wasn't going to rush. I knew Emily, her pride, her obsession with her image, her desperate need for validation. The way she looked at me when she said she was just trying to feel something, it wasn't remorse. It was selfishness disguised as vulnerability, and I wasn't going to fall for it again. I spent my days focusing on work, throwing myself into projects that were now mine to control. I had no more distractions, no more worrying about Emily's emotional needs or her family's expectations. And the more I worked, the more I realized how much I had given up. I had been living in the shadow of a lie for so long, it was hard to remember what it felt like to make decisions for myself. I even found small joys in things I had forgotten about: going for runs in the mornings, cooking simple meals, reading books I hadn't touched in years. The weight of Emily's manipulation had been lifted, and I felt free. But underneath that freedom, I still had a plan. I wasn't going to let Emily walk away unscathed. She had destroyed our marriage, and I wasn't about to let her forget it. She needed to face the wreckage of her actions, publicly, painfully. I made a few calls, secured some documents, and planned my next move. I didn't need to shout, to make a scene. No, my revenge would be colder, quieter, but it would be devastating. The kind of devastation that would make her regret every single moment she spent laughing at my expense. Then came the call. It was from a reporter, someone who had caught wind of the chaos surrounding Emily's affair. They had heard about the wedding debacle, the social media drama, and they wanted the full story. The reporter was eager, too eager, and that made me smile. Emily had made the mistake of broadcasting her life to the world, and now it was time for the world to see what she really was. I agreed to meet with the journalist, but I kept my plans tight-lipped. I didn't want Emily to know what I was about to do. The last thing I needed was her trying to manipulate the situation, twisting it to her advantage. As the day of the interview drew closer, I found myself calmer than I had expected. There was no guilt, no second-guessing. I wasn't doing this for revenge's sake. I was doing it for my own peace of mind. Emily had stolen too much from me already, and this was the only way I could take back what was rightfully mine, my dignity. The morning of the interview, I dressed carefully, choosing a suit that made me feel like the man I used to be before I let her drag me into her world of appearances and falsehoods. The journalist met me at a quiet cafe. We spoke in hushed tones, discussing Emily's marriage, the affair, the public humiliation at the wedding. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about setting the record straight. The world had seen Emily as the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect image of a high society woman. It was time for them to see the truth. I didn't need to offer a dramatic confession. I didn't need to rant about how badly she had treated me. I simply provided facts, dates, messages, conversations. The reporter took notes eagerly, but I kept my voice calm, detached. Emily didn't deserve the satisfaction of seeing me react emotionally. Once the interview was over, I left the cafe with a sense of finality. The storm was coming, but it was one I had controlled. The pieces were in place, and all I had to do was wait. I didn't feel satisfaction yet, not until the story broke. As the days passed, I continued to live my life, focusing on the things that mattered to me. The world would soon know the truth, and when it did, I would be ready. Emily thought she could destroy me, humiliate me for sport. But she hadn't counted on me walking away. She hadn't counted on me taking control of my own narrative. The morning the story went live, I felt a strange sense of calm. The article hit the newsstands early, making its rounds on social media. I had expected something, maybe a wave of anger, or even a feeling of guilt. But there was only clarity. I had done what needed to be done. The headline was as sharp as a knife: The Dark Side of the Perfect Life, the untold story of Emily Evans and her betrayal of husband Mark. Below it, a detailed account of Emily's affair, the wedding humiliation, and the way she had systematically dismantled our marriage for the sake of her image. The truth was all there, laid bare for the world to see. I watched as the first reactions rolled in. Comments flooded in from people who knew Emily, people who had admired her, her friends, her followers. They were shocked, some in disbelief, others in outrage. Some of them tried to defend her, but the tide had turned. The facade she had spent years building was crumbling in front of their eyes. It wasn't just the public reaction that brought me satisfaction. It was the fact that she no longer had control over the narrative. She had made me the joke, the fool, in front of everyone she cared about. Now, the world would see her as she truly was, a woman who had betrayed her husband, humiliated him, and lied to everyone around her. The phone calls started within hours. First, it was Emily's friends, desperately trying to reach me. They were upset, demanding to know what had happened. Then it was her mother, Jessica, calling and leaving messages on my phone, trying to smooth things over. None of it mattered. The damage was done, and the world had seen her for who she truly was. Later that afternoon, Emily called me. I had expected it, but I wasn't prepared for the venom in her voice. "You think you've won, don't you?" she hissed, her words dripping with anger. "You think this is some sort of victory? You've ruined everything. I'm going to make sure you regret this." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air, thick with bitterness. This was the woman who had laughed at me, who had humiliated me for sport, and now she was angry because the truth had come out. "I'm not here to fight, Emily," I said finally, my voice calm, colder than I had ever sounded before. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to close the scene. Her reaction was swift and predictable. There was a long pause, and then the screaming started. She raged against me, blaming me for everything, telling me I was the one who had ruined our family. But her words were hollow, empty. I had no desire to engage with her anymore. "I've moved on," I said simply. "You should too." And with that, I ended the call. I didn't know what Emily was going to do next. I didn't care. But I knew that this was the moment of no return. There was no going back for her now. She could scream, she could cry, she could do whatever she wanted, but it didn't matter. The truth was out, and the world would never look at her the same way again. As the day went on, I continued to see the fallout from the article. Emily's Instagram account, once filled with carefully staged photos of her glamorous life, was now under attack. Her posts were flooded with angry comments, some from strangers, others from people I had once called friends. The comment sections became a battleground, and Emily's carefully crafted image was being dismantled in real time. But it was the phone call from Sophie that made the most impact. She was quiet at first, and when she spoke, her voice was filled with an emotion I didn't expect: guilt. "Mark," she said softly, "I didn't know. I never thought. I never imagined Emily could do something like this." I could hear the sadness in her voice, and for a moment, I almost felt bad for her. But then I remembered that Sophie had been a part of the circus, too. She had known about Emily's obsession with maintaining the perfect image, and she had seen me get torn apart by it. "You didn't know?" I asked, my voice sharp. "You're all the same. You didn't care about the truth as long as everything looked perfect." Sophie didn't answer, and the silence between us felt heavier than it ever had before. When I hung up, I realized that this was the moment I had been waiting for. Not the public humiliation of Emily, not the way she had fallen from grace in front of her friends and family. No, the real victory was that I had taken control of my life again. I wasn't her punchline anymore. I wasn't a joke. I was the one who had exposed the truth. And with that, I had regained my dignity. But as the fallout continued to spread, through her friends, through social media, through her family, one thought kept running through my mind. I was done. The stage was set, the story told, and there was nothing left to say. There would be no reconciliation, no happy endings, no second chances. This was the end. The days after the fallout were strangely quiet, but I couldn't stop the sense of satisfaction that lingered in me. Emily's world had crumbled, piece by piece, as her betrayal was laid bare for all to see. She had spent years constructing this perfect life, but it was all built on lies, and now the truth had exposed every crack in her carefully built facade. I heard from Emily again, not that it was unexpected. Her desperate calls came in waves. First, it was the tearful ones, where she begged for another chance, trying to salvage whatever dignity she had left. Then came the angry ones, where she accused me of destroying everything we'd worked for. The last few were filled with blame, not on herself, but on the world for turning against her. But no matter how many times she called, I didn't pick up. I knew the truth, and nothing she said could change it. Her family, too, was frantic. Jessica called me once more, pleading for me to reconsider, to not let the scandal ruin everything. But I had made my decision long before they came crawling. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. Not now, not ever. It wasn't long before I started receiving messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Former colleagues, acquaintances from Emily's circle, some of them reaching out with sympathy, others with a sense of guilt for having turned a blind eye to the marriage that had fallen apart in front of them. But none of them mattered. They weren't the ones I needed to hear from. The moment I had been waiting for came the day Emily showed up at my apartment. She didn't knock. She just walked right in, her face pale, her eyes filled with desperation. "Mark," she began, her voice shaky. "I've made so many mistakes, but I want to fix this. Please. I can't lose you. I can't let everything we had go to waste." She stood there, staring at me as if expecting something, an apology, a sign of remorse from me. I didn't say a word. I simply stared back, calm, collected. Her eyes flickered with a mix of desperation and realization. She knew, deep down, that there was nothing left to say. "You really don't get it, do you?" I finally spoke, my voice flat. "You never cared about me, Emily. You cared about the version of me that you could control. You wanted someone who fit your picture-perfect life, and when I didn't fit the mold anymore, you threw me away." Her lips quivered, but I saw no true regret. She was broken, yes, but she was still trying to manipulate the situation. It was the same game, but the stakes had changed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice weak, as though that one word could undo everything. I shook my head. "No, you're not. You're sorry because it's over. You're sorry because you lost control. I stood up and walked toward the door, my movement steady and deliberate. Emily didn't move. She just stood there, watching me, probably hoping for some last-minute change of heart. But I had no heart left to give. I'm done with this, Emily, I said coldly, my words final. You don't get to apologize your way out of this one. I opened the door and stepped out, leaving her standing in the hallway, her face crumpled with tears. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The finality of it was all I needed. As I walked away, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders, the last remnants of her manipulation falling away. There was no satisfaction in it, not anymore. No joy, no vindication. Just cold, clear closure. I didn't need her. I didn't need anyone in her world. The next day, I got into my car and drove without a destination in mind. I had no idea where I was going, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, I was free. I took a deep breath, rolling down the window, feeling the wind rush past me. It was a simple moment, but it felt like everything. The life I had once lived with Emily was gone. The marriage, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it was all in the past now. There was nothing left to hold me back. As I drove into the unknown, I knew one thing for sure. I was done. The mask had fallen. No more cameras needed. The final scene was over.